Welcome back to her Fireside Stories. The day my granddaughter called me too basic was the day I stopped bending over backward to please people who only saw my wallet, not my worth. I'd spent my life baking birthday cakes, clipping coupons, crocheting baby blankets, and saving every spare dollar to make her dreams come true. But when she mocked me behind my back, said I'd ruin her aesthetic. At the bridal shower I paid for, I did something I'd never done before. I said no. I picked up the phone, called the venue, and canceled every last detail. Some might call it petty. I call it freedom, because sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do is stop apologizing for existing. You want an earth-shaking opener? Well, here it is. The day my granddaughter called me too basic, I canceled her bridal shower. And by canceled, I mean I pulled every penny of my hard-earned money from that fancy venue, leaving her entire event in ruins. Harsh, maybe. Necessary, absolutely. My name is Penelope Winters, and for 70 years I've towed the line, cooking, cleaning, hosting holiday dinners, and crocheting baby blankets with a polite smile as if it were my sole destiny to prop up everyone else's happiness. But that day, oh, that glorious, dreadful day, my heart shattered in a way that felt like freedom. You see, my granddaughter Adeline had always been the apple of my eye. She's tall and willowy with warm brown skin and a crown of luscious dark curls, styled in what she calls a boho wave, framing her face like something out of a bridal magazine. Growing up, she lit up rooms just by walking into them. I made her dresses when she was little, taught her how to bake chocolate chip cookies from scratch, and even picked up extra shifts as a hotel receptionist after retirement just to save for her dream wedding. When she got engaged to her fiancé, a kind enough fellow named Nicholas, I poured myself into making her shower a day to remember. Little did I know that in a corner of her group chat, I'd become a joke, my fashion sense ridiculed, my presence deemed embarrassingly outdated. It wasn't as if I expected to strut in wearing haute couture and professional makeup. I'm no runway model. I still keep my silver hair short and spiky dusted with a lilac tint whenever I'm feeling bold. I like comfortable slacks, flowy blouses, and classic loafers. But to Adeline, apparently, my carefully chosen and yes, budget-friendly outfit was too lowbrow for her luxury vibe. Worse still, she suggested to her bridesmaids, my own daughter Caroline included, that maybe I shouldn't be invited at all in case I cramped their style. They thought I wouldn't see those texts. Fate had other plans. I was accidentally included in that group chat, and in a split second, my illusions of a doting family were shredded by laughter emojis. I wish I could say I was furious, but the truth was, I felt numb. I read her comments about me being so basic, bless her heart, and for the first time in my life, I realized how little respect I'd earned from the very people I'd sacrificed for. I scrolled, reread, and scrolled again, expecting some sign of regret from Caroline or one of the bridesmaids. Nothing. They chimed in with remarks about my coupon clipping and how my love for rummage sales probably meant I'd show up in a grandma special from the clearance rack. Then, just as my vision blurred with tears, I stumbled upon the final straw. Adeline writing, "Let's just keep the shower small and not mention it to Grandma. She won't even notice." That was the moment I decided quietly, solemnly, that I was done being the family doormat. They wanted a high-end event. Let them figure it out themselves. Up until that point, I'd booked a rustic luxe barn venue in the countryside, purchased custom linens with embroidered monograms, and arranged for a dessert table that included everything from Belgian chocolate truffles to hand-dyed macarons. I even splurged on floral arrangements featuring roses, baby's breath, and peonies, Adeline's favorite. All of it was set, paid, and confirmed. My bank account had taken a considerable hit, but I told myself it was worth it for my granddaughter's happiness, because that's what we do, right? We love our kin unconditionally. So when I finished reading those cruel texts, I felt a strange kind of clarity flood my mind, like cold water after a scorching day. My granddaughter called me basic, insisted I was an eyesore to her aesthetic, and implied I was best left out of her big moment. Fine. I walked to my kitchen phone, dialed the venue, and canceled every last detail. The coordinator on the other end was stunned. She stammered about the deposit, the non-refundable fees, the final invoice I told her to charge me, whatever was owed. I didn't care if I lost it all. Hanging up that phone felt like exhaling after a lifetime of holding my breath. Then I sat down, sipped my lukewarm tea, and realized I was shaking from head to toe. My daughter Carolyn, whose hair was freshly cut into a sleek bob, she dyed honey blonde, had co-signed on some of Adeline's shower details, but only at my urging. She often bragged about how her corporate job kept her too busy to handle planning. I did it all gladly until that day. Did Caroline stand up for me in the chat? Did she say, "Hold on, that's my mother you're insulting"? No, she just passively allowed Adeline to rant, maybe tossing in an awkward emoji here or there. When the final text landed, "She's so sweet but totally behind the times," my own child responded with, "I know, right?" If my heartbreak had been a physical thing, it would have shattered my kitchen tiles. That afternoon, I locked myself in my sewing room and cried until my eyes burned. Then I did something I hadn't done in decades. I opened an old journal and wrote down the entire story, word for word, heartbreak by heartbreak, letting the pen guide me through anger, sorrow, and the slow budding sense of self-worth that told me it was time to speak up. Things escalated quickly. The day after I canceled the venue, the phone calls began. Caroline was first shrieking into my voicemail about how the barn coordinator said everything was called off. "Mom, what did you do?" she demanded. Then, as if I'd personally orchestrated a scandal, she accused me of ruining Adeline's wedding events on purpose. She said words like childish, vindictive, and spiteful. I was none of those things, maybe just a grandmother who'd reached her breaking point. Next, Adeline herself texted me, not an apology, but an explosion of capital letters and exclamation points. "Why would you cancel my shower?" She insisted it was all a misunderstanding. She only meant that maybe I should upgrade my wardrobe, that she was just joking around with her bridesmaids, and that I needed to get over my hurt feelings. A few hours later, she showed up at my door hair in a messy side braid that probably took her an hour to style, so it looked effortless wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater. She looked youthful, annoyed, and deeply entitled. "Grandma," she started, "I didn't mean you were basic. I was just saying your usual clothes might clash with the theme." I stared at her. "So, let's see if I understand. You want my money for a luxury bridal shower, but you don't want my presents unless I look like someone off a runway." She rolled her eyes. Well, when you say it like that, I cut her off. Is there some magical place I can pick up a new personality and a new generation so that my existence doesn't offend you? She sighed dramatically, plopped onto my couch, and flipped through a magazine as though bored by the conversation. "You're twisting my words," she said. "I just wanted the aesthetic to match my brand, my online presence. It's an important day." My throat clenched. The only thing that came out of my mouth was your brand. "I'm your grandmother, Adeline, not an accessory." After that, I calmly pointed to the door. "I think you should leave. I have no intention of reinstating that venue. If you want a shower, plan it yourself and pay for it too." Her eyes widened as though she'd never imagined a scenario where Grandma didn't cave to her every whim, and with that she stormed out, letting the door slam behind her. Strangely, once Adeline was gone, a wave of relief washed over me. The phone kept ringing, texts kept dinging, but I felt like a husk that had shed its old skin. For too long, I had played the part of the sweet, unassuming grandmother. Even my hair, silver and cropped close, had always been nice, appropriate, humble. I realized that the quiet acceptance people saw in me wasn't a personality trait. It was a defense mechanism. It was how I navigated a life where my worth was determined by how much I gave. I decided to visit an old friend of mine, Miriam, who owned a small boutique, downtown part craft store, part bakery, and part personal confessional for half the women in our neighborhood. Miriam had short bubblegum pink hair styled in spunky spikes and the mouth of a sailor when she got riled up. She'd known me for decades, watched me raise Caroline as a single mother after my husband passed, and was well aware that I tended to put others' needs before my own. As soon as I walked into her shop, she greeted me with a suspicious squint. "You look like a woman on the brink," she said, and I was over a steaming cup of chai. I unloaded the entire story. Miriam listened, her eyes growing rounder with each betrayal I listed. Finally, she placed her teacup down, stood up, and marched me to a nearby mirror. "What do you see?" she asked. I shrugged, tears pricking my eyes again. "I see a worn-out grandmother who's tired of being disrespected." She gave me a half smile. "I see a woman who's been undervalued for too long. You have the power to change that narrative." That day I left her shop with a new blouse, soft turquoise linen embroidered at the collar with delicate flowers. It was a small purchase, something that felt distinctly me. But it wasn't about the blouse itself. It was about choosing something for my own joy instead of for someone else's approval. I realized that if I was going to stand firm in my decision, I needed to own it. Yes, I canceled the shower. Yes, I upset my family. But maybe, just maybe, I was allowed to choose my own dignity after all these years. In the week that followed, tensions soared. Caroline sent scathing voicemails about how her daughter's big day was in jeopardy. Adeline posted passive-aggressive messages on social media that read something like, "It's sad when the people you count on the most let you down," followed by a flurry of emojis. The rest of the family started taking sides. My sister Linda, with her wavy silver bob, thought I'd been too harsh. "Adeline's a kid," she reasoned. "She doesn't understand how hurtful her words can be." Meanwhile, my cousin Beatrice, sporting her signature dyed black pixie cut, applauded me for standing up for myself, saying, "It's high time you taught them a lesson." Penny, surprisingly, a few of Adeline's friends, women I'd never met, reached out to me privately confessing that they admired my gumption. One of them wrote, "I wish my mom had stood up to me when I was a spoiled brat about my sweet 16. Maybe I wouldn't have taken her for granted so many years." Those messages felt like tiny rays of validation, reassuring me that perhaps I wasn't a monster. Amid the chaos, I tried to continue my quiet routines. I'd wake up, walk to the community garden, where I tended my own little patch of herbs, then come home to knit blankets or watch old movies. Yet something had shifted inside me. I felt a flicker of self-respect, growing a spark that threatened to engulf every old pattern of behavior I'd ever followed. I'd always believed that being a good mother and grandmother meant bending over backward for my family. Now, for the first time, I questioned that belief. Was unconditional love the same as unconditional servitude? Did allowing them to belittle me truly make me a good grandmother? Or did it just make me complicit in my own erasure? One afternoon, as I sat at my kitchen table balancing my checkbook, I realized I had significantly more funds than usual. That was the refunded chunk from the canceled shower, minus the cancellation fees. I smiled to myself, sipped my tea, and knew exactly where I wanted to redirect that money. A part of me wanted to do something daring, something purely for my own joy, unattached to any family obligation. I decided to invest it in a local women's center that was struggling financially. I'd volunteered there a few times, helping women who'd lost their homes or fled abusive relationships. The center director, Tanisha, had once confided in me that they were always on the brink of closing. So, with newfound resolve, I wrote a sizable check and mailed it off with a note. In honor of any woman who has ever been called too basic, it was an act of both defiance and compassion, a way to transform my heartbreak into a lifeline for someone else. A few days later, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a young woman, Lily Kwan, standing there with a camera bag slung over her shoulder. She wore her dark hair in a sleek ponytail, a few teal blue streaks peeking through an edgy modern look that caught me off guard. She introduced herself as a documentary filmmaker doing a project on generational conflicts within families, focusing on how older women's stories often go untold or dismissed. She'd heard about my situation through the grapevine, perhaps from someone at the Women's Center, and wanted to interview me. My first instinct was to slam the door. The last thing I needed was more drama. But something in her earnest eyes made me pause. I know it's intrusive, Lily said softly, but I believe your story could help a lot of people, especially women who feel their voices have been overshadowed by younger generations. A prickle of pride or maybe curiosity stirred in my chest. After all, I had just started to see the power in standing up for myself. Maybe speaking on camera would be another step forward. I invited her in, offered her a seat at my worn-out dining table, and asked her to set up her equipment. She started with basic questions, my full name, age, background, but soon we delved into heavier topics. My late husband's passing, how I'd single-handedly raised Caroline, and how I'd poured my savings into Adeline's dream wedding. By the time we reached the too basic fiasco, I was trembling, tears threatening to spill. Lily paused. The camera gently placed a hand on mine and said, "Take your time, Miss Winters. Your voice matters here." I'd never felt so seen. Lily's quiet presence made it easier to speak the truths I'd kept hidden for decades. How I'd often felt overshadowed by my daughter's ambitions and cast aside by the granddaughter I doted on. I confessed my guilt over betraying them by canceling the shower, yet also the profound relief I felt afterward. The words poured out like water rushing from a broken dam. After we finished recording, Lily looked at me with a kind of awe. "Ms. Winters," she said, "this is exactly the story I want to capture. The untold perspective of a woman who has always cared for others, but is finally caring for herself." She tentatively asked if she could film more, maybe even follow me through my daily routines to document how I handled the fallout of my decision. Part of me wanted to cling to privacy. The other part recognized the power of letting the world hear my perspective. So with my hands trembling, I agreed. Over the next few days, Lily's camera became a fixture in my life. She recorded me tidying the house, visiting the Women's Center to drop off crocheted blankets, even venturing into the local thrift shop where I found new patterns for my sewing projects. She asked thoughtful questions, never pushing too far, but always encouraging me to reflect on what truly mattered to me. It was during one of these sessions that Caroline finally showed up unannounced. She burst through the front door, cheeks flushed and hair tousled, her usual sleek bob now fraying at the edges. She looked stressed. "Mom, we need to talk," she said, voice on the brink of tears. Lily politely offered to stop filming, but Caroline insisted on continuing. Her gaze flicked to the camera, then back to me. "Why would you do this to Adeline?" Caroline demanded. "She's been crying nonstop, worried about how she'll look in front of her friends." Her voice quivered with an anger I couldn't fully comprehend. "She's saying you humiliated her on purpose." I took a shaky breath. "Caroline, I canceled the shower because I found out how she really felt about me. I have screenshots if you want proof." She called me too basic, said she didn't want me there unless I could change my entire appearance. My daughter's face fell, the color draining from her cheeks. "Mom," she whispered. She couldn't have said that, but I showed her. And in that moment, I saw the flicker of horror cross Caroline's eyes. Caroline sank onto my sofa, burying her face in her hands. Lily quietly angled the camera away out of respect, capturing more of the room's ambiance than Caroline's raw sobbing. After a minute, Caroline lifted her head, tears streaking her mascara. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. "I would have talked to her." I couldn't suppress a bitter laugh. "Would you?" "You were in the chat, Caroline. I saw your name right there with the rest of them, letting her insult me." She shook her head, visibly shaken. I don't remember seeing those messages, Mom. I must have skimmed or I was busy. Her excuses hung in the air, flimsy as cobwebs. I just nodded, arms crossed. Now you know, I said quietly, and it hurts, but I have to stand by my decision. Caroline tried to persuade me to reinstate the shower, even offering to pay back some of the venue cost. Adeline will apologize. She promised we can make it a teachable moment, but the memory of those cruel words was still too fresh, too painful. Caroline, I said, if Adeline truly wants to make amends, let her figure it out. Let her be the one to show she's changed. I'm not throwing more money or energy into it. Just then, Lily discreetly ended the recording, giving us space to have a private moment. She excused herself to grab a glass of water. Caroline leaned in, her voice raw. Mom, I'm sorry. I never realized how much we've relied on you without ever giving you respect. We just assumed you'd always be there, foot in the door. Wallet open, arms outstretched. She let out a shaky breath. I don't want to lose you over a bridal shower. I searched her face, remembering the feisty little girl who used to cling to my apron, who once cut off all her Barbie's hair to give it a trend-setting bob like hers. You won't lose me, I said, my voice trembling, but I need a break from sacrificing everything for people who don't see me as an equal. I won't budge on that. A few days later, a wave of texts and calls from distant relatives flooded my phone. Some took my side, commending me for standing my ground, while others slammed me for sabotaging the wedding. In the midst of this whirlwind, Lily approached me with an idea. She wanted to host a small gathering, an informal dinner where my family could come together and talk openly while she filmed it. It would serve as a culminating point for her documentary, a raw moment of reconciliation, or at the very least, confrontation. Initially, the idea terrified me, my family airing our dirty laundry on camera. It felt invasive, but Lily argued that capturing real honesty could help others facing similar generational rifts. She promised to keep the final edit respectful and to give me final approval before submitting her film to festivals. After sleeping on it, I realized I wanted a chance to speak my truth without being drowned out by accusations. Maybe, just maybe, seeing themselves on camera might jolt Adeline and Caroline into confronting their own behavior. So Lily arranged a simple dinner at a local event hall. We set up a potluck, no fancy caterers, no embroidered napkins, just a table with homemade dishes. Miriam arrived with her pink spiky hair, brandishing a giant lemon meringue pie. My cousin Beatrice, the one with the dyed black pixie cut, showed up with a tray of deviled eggs. Even Linda came offering a subdued fruit salad. Slowly, family members trickled in, looking a bit uncertain, but drawn by curiosity and perhaps the promise of being part of something bigger. Adeline and Nicholas arrived last. She wore her hair in loose, glossy curls pinned on one side with a sparkly barrette, a style that felt both glamorous and heartbreakingly young. She avoided my gaze at first, clinging to Nicholas's arm, but I felt a glimmer of hope when I saw her eyes dart around the room, noticing there were no lavish decorations, no towering centerpieces, just real people in a real moment. Lily had set up a camera in the corner, discreetly filming, while the rest of us milled about awkwardly, waiting for someone to break the tension. We all gathered around the table, plates in hand. Lily perched behind her camera, her teal-streaked ponytail swaying as she panned across the room. Eventually, she gave me a small nod, a silent invitation to say what needed saying, with my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I stood up. I want to thank everyone for coming, I began, my voice echoing in the quiet. I know this is a strange situation to have our family's personal issues filmed, but sometimes the truth needs a stage. Caroline glanced at Adeline, who seemed anxious, fiddling with the barrette in her hair. I swallowed back a rush of nerves and continued. I canceled the bridal shower because I read messages in which I was insulted, made fun of, and ultimately disinvited from an event I was paying for. It was the last straw in a long line of feeling invisible in my own family. Adeline's eyes brimmed with tears, but she kept silent. I have spent years bending over backward to make sure everyone else was taken care of. I neglected my own happiness, my own sense of worth, and I realized I couldn't keep doing that. So, if that makes me the villain in your eyes, so be it. A hush followed, broken only by the soft hum of Lily's camera. Then Nicholas, who'd been mostly silent throughout this ordeal, cleared his throat. Mrs. Winters, he said, I want you to know that I never intended any disrespect toward you. I had no idea about those texts until recently. He turned to Adeline. I love you, but what you said to your grandmother was wrong. Adeline flinched, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. She tried to speak, but faltered, her voice coming out in a choked whisper. Grandma, She stopped, took a breath, and forced herself to meet my gaze. I'm so sorry. I was caught up in all the wedding hype, wanting everything to look perfect, wanting my friends to think I have it all together. I let that feed my ego. But I never meant to hurt you like this. The air in the room felt charged like a thunderstorm about to break. I looked at my granddaughter, her tears dripping onto her pastel blouse. For a second, a memory flashed Adeline as a small child, balancing on my knees, giggling as I read her a silly story. How had we gotten here to the point where she'd see me as an accessory to be polished or discarded at whim? It did hurt. I confessed, my voice trembling. I've always tried to be there for you to support your dreams. And seeing those words, the mocking, the dismissal, was like a punch to the gut. Adeline nodded, cheeks flaming red. I know, and I regret it so much. I've been asking myself, why did I say that? Why did I even think it? And I realize how shallow I've become. I've turned my wedding into a brand rather than a celebration of love. Across the table, Caroline dabbed her eyes with a napkin, then spoke up. Mom, I need to apologize too. I was so busy with work and so used to letting you handle everything that I didn't bother to look closely at what Adeline was saying. I wrote it off as girl talk or wedding stress. That's on me. She looked at Adeline, eyes brimming with tears. We both messed up big time. In the silence that followed, Beatrice, my cousin, cleared her throat. We've all been complicit in some way in letting Penny be the eternal giver without seeing her own wants or needs. Maybe this moment, painful as it is a chance for change. Linda nodded, tossing me a look of sympathy, and added, I know I scolded you, Penny, for canceling the shower, but maybe it was a wake-up call. We all need it. Adeline stepped forward, literally crossing the space between us. She extended her hand, voice trembling. Grandma, I'm sorry. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. If you still want to be part of my wedding, I promise I won't take you for granted. And if you don't, I'll understand. Her words cracked open the final barrier in my heart. I looked down at her hand, then back into her eyes. I reached out and clasped Adeline's hand, tears stinging my eyes. I do want to be part of your wedding, I said, but I also need to know that my presence is welcome because you love me, not because you want my checkbook or because it's convenient. Adeline nodded vigorously. I swear, Grandma, I've learned my lesson. This wedding should be about family and commitment, not social media perfection. She mustered a faint smile. You can wear whatever you like, even that cute lilac-tinted pixie you've been talking about. A small wave of laughter rippled through the room, dissipating some of the tension. Lily, still filming quietly, caught my eye and offered an encouraging nod. I knew this footage, this raw emotional confrontation, would become a pivotal moment in her documentary, and oddly enough, I felt proud. Proud of my family for facing our issues, proud of myself for not backing down. After the tears and apologies, we actually shared a real meal together the first time in what felt like ages. Miriam served up her lemon meringue pie. Caroline dished out her homemade casserole, and Linda poured glasses of sweet tea. Adeline sat beside me, occasionally resting her head on my shoulder, as if trying to reforge the bond we'd both nearly lost. Nicholas offered to help with the dishes, fumbling clumsily in the kitchen, but laughing at his own ineptitude. Later, as the evening wound down and people began gathering coats and leftovers, Lily requested one final interview snippet. She asked each of us in turn to share one takeaway from this experience. Caroline said something about family unity, needing honesty to truly thrive. Adeline admitted that she'd been blinded by superficial goals. Nicholas spoke about the importance of humility. And me, I looked straight into the camera, tears welling up in my eyes, and said, "Every woman deserves to be seen, heard, and appreciated. Don't ever let someone tell you you're too basic to matter." Where are you listening from? Dear friend, I'm here in my cozy little studio in Vermont. Leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe if this story touched your heart. Over the next few weeks, the plan for Adeline's shower was resurrected, but with major modifications. Instead of a lavish brand-centric affair in a swanky barn, she opted for something more down to earth. A backyard gathering at Caroline's place, featuring homemade decorations and an affordable catered lunch. The color scheme was pastel yellow and sage green, still fancy enough for photos, of course, and she really asked me to help with the planning. This time it felt different. She valued my opinions, sought my help in choosing flowers, and even asked if I'd make a quilt as a decorative centerpiece. We spent afternoons going over details, cake flavors, music playlists, table settings, but what warmed my heart most was seeing Adeline learn to budget. She'd always had an allowance and a credit card from her parents, but this was the first time she truly understood the cost of everything. She apologized again for how much she'd taken for granted, especially financially. "Grandma," she said, when I saw the real numbers, "it hit me how much you were willing to sacrifice for my big day." Outside of the shower, planning life felt more balanced. Caroline, possibly relieved that the crisis was receding, made an effort to visit me more often. We'd have coffee and chat about her job, my crocheting, and yes, even the upcoming wedding. She still wore her honey blonde bob, but I could tell she'd softened around the edges, less corporate steel in her gaze. She confided that she'd been in counseling to address stress issues and her tendency to rely too heavily on me. "I realized I was letting Adeline treat you the way I let my bosses treat me," she admitted. "It's like I never learned to assert myself, and then I didn't teach her either." Meanwhile, Lily continued her documentary project, filming occasional follow-ups and capturing the slow but steady shift in our family dynamic. She even got a few interviews with local women who resonated with my story, mothers, grandmothers, and aunts who felt similarly taken for granted by younger relatives. It became clear that this wasn't just our family's drama. It was a universal theme of older women feeling overlooked in a society that values youth and trends above all else. As the shower drew closer, Adeline surprised me by inviting my friend Miriam to help with the dessert table. The two of them bonded over their mutual love for creative confections. Miriam's spiky pink hair bobbing around as she piped frosting rosettes on homemade cupcakes. Adeline, in a ponytail that day, listened intently to Miriam's stories about how she opened her shop with only $50 in her pocket. It warmed my heart to see Adeline learning from a strong, independent woman, a far cry from the superficial chatter I'd once witnessed in those dreaded group texts. The big day arrived bright and sunny. Caroline's backyard was set up with white chairs, bunting flags in pastel colors, and a modest canopy to shade the food table. Adeline wore a simple white sundress with delicate lace straps, her glossy curls pinned up with a single rose. She looked youthful, happy, and most importantly, grounded. I wore my new turquoise blouse and matching slacks, feeling quietly confident. The guests arrived extended family friends, a few of Adeline's co-workers. Rather than a showy brand activation corner for Instagram, Adeline created a memory table filled with old family photos, including some of me holding her as a baby. She introduced me proudly to her friends, saying, "This is my grandmother, Penelope. She practically raised me, and she's the reason I know what real love looks like." My eyes stung with tears at the sincerity in her voice. There were party games, fun, silly ones like bridal trivia and guess the dress. We ate finger sandwiches, fruit tarts, and two types of cake, strawberry shortcake and red velvet. People mingled, laughed, and took pictures by a handmade floral arch that I'd helped assemble using Caroline's old garden trellis. And yes, I noticed Adeline's phone came out occasionally for photos. But not once did she talk about the brand or fret about me cramping the aesthetic. In fact, she asked me to pose with her for a grandmother-granddaughter snapshot that she immediately posted online with a heartfelt caption. After most of the guests had left, Adeline pulled me aside. She gently took my hands in hers. "Grandma," she said, her voice a little shaky, "thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for being here, for making this day perfect in a way I never expected." I looked into her eyes, seeing a newfound maturity there. "Sweetheart, I'm proud of you," I whispered. "Not because the shower turned out lovely, but because you took responsibility for your actions and made amends." Just then, Caroline joined us, wrapping her arms around both me and Adeline in a group hug. We might have looked ridiculous, but I didn't care. My daughter, my granddaughter, and I, finally on the same page, finally understanding each other's worth. Lily, of course, caught the tender moment on camera. And maybe for the first time, I didn't mind. Because that footage wasn't capturing drama or tension, it was capturing genuine reconciliation. Later that evening, after everyone had gone, Lily stayed behind to chat with me on the porch. She noted how far we'd come since she first interviewed me. "Ms. Winters," she said, "seeing you assert your dignity changed everything. It rippled through your entire family." I nodded, thinking back on how a single act of defiance, canceling that shower, had led to all these moments of growth. "They say sometimes you have to break a bone so it can heal correctly," I mused. Maybe that's what happened here. We shattered our illusions to rebuild something real. Lily told me she planned to wrap up filming soon and would begin editing the documentary. She asked if I had a message for other older women who might feel invisible or disrespected. I considered her question. I'd say, "Don't be afraid to set boundaries and demand respect." I answered, "It's never too late to stand up for yourself. And remember, the people who truly love you will adjust. They'll learn to respect you if they value you at all." Lily beamed, jotted down my words, and packed up her camera. In the following weeks, life slipped into a pleasant rhythm. Adeline busied herself with the final stages of wedding planning, securing the venue, sending out invites, deciding on a modest but tasteful decor theme. Caroline and I fell into a gentle routine of coffee dates and weekend brunches. Sometimes we'd talk about wedding details. Other times we'd just talk about old memories, like the time she was 5 and insisted on wearing a purple tutu to church because she wanted to jazz up her Sunday best. One morning, as I sipped coffee by my window, I received a text from Lily. "Are you available for one last recording session? Got something special to show you." Intrigued, I invited her over. She arrived that afternoon sporting her trademark ponytail with teal streaks and set up her camera in my living room. Then she clicked on her laptop to reveal a rough cut of the documentary. I watched, heart hammering in my chest, as scenes from my life flickered across the screen. My tearful confession. Caroline's confrontation, Adeline's apology at the dinner, the final backyard shower. The narration was gentle but honest, highlighting the complexities of generational rifts and the invisible labor older women often carry. Lily had woven my story with segments from other women who'd faced similar challenges. Mothers not invited to weddings, grandmothers mocked for their dated styles, aunts left out of family photos. Each story was a testament to the heartbreak that can occur when love is taken for granted. But the film ended on a hopeful note footage from the backyard shower with Adeline hugging me and Lily's voiceover saying, in asserting her worth, Penelope not only changed her family's dynamic, but reminded us all that it's never too late to be seen. By the time the credits rolled, I was in tears. Lily paused the video and offered me a tissue. I think your story will resonate with so many people, she whispered. Do I have your blessing to submit this to film festivals? I stared at the frozen frame of me and Adeline smiling at each other, tears glistening in our eyes. It felt raw, vulnerable, but also important. Yes, I said. Share it. If it helps even one person stand up for themselves, it's worth it. As Adeline's wedding day approached, I found myself reflecting on my own wedding decades ago. A small church ceremony, a simple dress, a shared slice of cake that felt monumental at the time. I remembered how my late husband James had insisted on picking wildflowers instead of buying bouquets, believing the personal touch mattered more than the cost. I had loved him deeply, though our life wasn't perfect. After he passed, I poured all my energy into raising Caroline and later doting on Adeline. Maybe part of me had been stuck in grief, always trying to overcompensate for James's absence by giving too much of myself. Now I wasn't just a grandmother or mother. I felt a renewed sense of identity, a woman with her own desires, a person worthy of respect. In the swirl of wedding hustle, I found the time to finally fulfill a long-held wish traveling to a nearby coastal town to see the ocean at sunrise. I'd never had the chance before, always too busy, too constrained by family duties. But one weekend, I simply packed a small bag and drove 3 hours to Bellshore Beach, arriving in time to watch the sun peek over the horizon. Standing there, the salty wind whipping through my short, lilac-tinted hair, I felt the vastness of possibility. When I returned, I noticed a difference in how people interacted with me. Caroline asked how my trip went, with genuine curiosity, even offering to frame a photo I'd taken of the sunrise. Adeline texted me a playful, "You go, Grandma," with a selfie of her, doing a thumbs up. The shift was subtle but meaningful. My family no longer assumed I'd simply be at home waiting to jump at their requests. They were starting to respect my boundaries, my time, my life. In one of our last pre-wedding get-togethers, Adeline confided that she was nervous about the ceremony. Nicholas and I have argued about silly stuff, she admitted, like whether we should do a first look or keep it traditional. I worry we're fighting over trivialities just like I used to. Am I making the same mistakes again? I reassured her that arguments are normal, but it's crucial to approach them with empathy and respect. Nothing's perfect, I said, recalling my own marriage, but you learn and grow together. And if you both stay honest with each other, you'll be fine. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, the sky so blue it looked almost painted. Adeline had chosen an outdoor venue, a charming garden nestled behind a historic manor. Instead of a black tie affair, she encouraged guests to wear comfortable, semi-formal attire, inviting everyone to just be themselves. When I arrived wearing a flowing mauve dress that I had sewn myself, I felt a wave of pride seeing Adeline greet family and friends with genuine warmth. Her signature curls were swept into an elegant updo, adorned with baby's breath flowers. She looked radiant not because of the fancy dress, but because of the love in her eyes. I took my seat in the front row with Caroline beside me. She leaned over and whispered, "I'm glad you're here, Mom. I'm proud of you." Tears pricked my eyes as the ceremony began. Nicholas appeared looking sharp, but also sweetly nervous. And then Adeline made her grand entrance. Her eyes found mine, and she gave me a subtle nod, one that spoke volumes about gratitude, reconciliation, and the bond we'd almost lost. The officiant spoke about unity, about how marriage is built on mutual respect and understanding, words that felt particularly poignant given everything we'd gone through. As Adeline and Nicholas exchanged vows, my mind flashed back to that group text, the heartbreak, the tears, and the miraculous healing that followed. Then I noticed Lily quietly filming from the side, capturing this culminating moment for her documentary. I caught her eye and smiled, grateful that she'd come into my life exactly when I needed a witness to my truth. After the ceremony, we mingled in the garden. People congratulated the new couple, complimented Adeline on the thoughtful decor, simple pastel linens, wildflowers in mason jars, and raved about the open-air buffet. I drifted toward a small corner, taking in the scene from a distance. Miriam found me and handed me a glass of lemonade. "You did it, Penny," she said, her pink spikes catching the sunlight. "You stood up for yourself, and look, nobody disintegrated, life carried on. And it's even better now." I nodded, letting the sweet tart taste of lemonade remind me that sometimes bitterness can transform into something refreshing and full of zing. The reception was a warm, joyful affair. There were heartfelt toasts. Caroline spoke about how Adeline's growth reminded her of her own journey toward recognizing the quieter pillars in her life. Nicholas thanked everyone for embracing him and for teaching him that family is more than just a collection of relatives. It's a collective heartbeat. Even I got a turn at the mic. My speech was short, but it came straight from the depths of my soul. I used to think that love meant giving until it hurt. Now, I know it also means standing up when you've had enough, I said. A smattering of cheers and applause followed, but what mattered more was the glimmer of tears in Adeline's eyes. After the formalities, the music began, a mix of oldies pop tunes and a few country ballads. I found myself dancing with Beatrice and Linda, the three of us giggling like teenagers. Miriam showed off her moves, pink hair swirling. Even Lily joined us briefly, stepping away from her camera to sway to the music. Adeline approached me after a while, taking my hand gently. "Grandma," she said, "will you share a dance with me?" I hesitated, then nodded. She guided me through a slow waltz, an unexpected choice for someone her age, but it felt timeless. At one point, she rested her head on my shoulder. "I wish I could take back those words," she whispered, voice barely audible over the music. I was so blind, I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "What matters is you see clearly now," I replied, "and that you're building a future where respect and empathy hold more weight than any social media brand." She nodded, tears forming again. "Thank you," she said, "for teaching me a lesson. I'll never forget. In that moment, I felt a wave of gratitude for the heartbreak that led us here. Sometimes you have to lose something, like a certain illusion of harmony, to find true closeness." We finished our dance to applause from onlookers, and Adeline wrapped me in a warm hug. Cameras flashed, capturing a moment that for once felt entirely authentic. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you feel like staying a little longer with me, don't forget to subscribe. It truly means the world. When the wedding festivities ended, I expected life to settle back into a normal pace. But Lily had other plans. She informed me that the rough cut of her documentary was getting buzz in the indie film circuit, and a major platform might pick it up. "This could go big." "Ms. Winters," she said, practically vibrating with excitement. "They love the angle, an older woman standing her ground in a world that dismisses her. The possibility of my family's conflict going public to that extent made me queasy, but Lily assured me that any final deal would require my consent. Over the next few weeks, she polished the film, added final edits, and recorded a few voiceovers. I gave input on which segments to include and which to trim. Even Adeline and Caroline consented to appear, wanting to show others that families can heal if everyone's willing to listen. Miriam, Linda, and Beatrice all offered cameo interviews about what my stand meant to them. It turned into a community project. Women of various ages chiming in with their stories of feeling overlooked, overshadowed, or plain too basic for a society obsessed with the new and trendy. Sure enough, a month later, Lily called me in a frenzy of excitement. "We got accepted into the Crescent City Documentary Festival," she exclaimed, referencing a well-known event in New Orleans that celebrates independent filmmaking. It felt surreal. Me, a 70-year-old grandmother from a small town, was about to become the subject of a documentary screening at a film festival. I wasn't sure whether to laugh, cry, or hide under my bed. Caroline encouraged me to go, pointing out that it was a chance to spread a positive message. Adeline seconded the idea, promising to help with the travel arrangements. "You're basically a star, Grandma," she joked. I couldn't help but smile at how far we'd come, so I packed a modest suitcase and boarded a plane for Louisiana, heart pounding with anticipation. Part of me feared that seeing our family's turmoil on a big screen would dredge up old wounds, but a bigger part of me felt compelled to share this victory, this testament to the fact that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity. New Orleans greeted me with jazz notes in the air and the savory aroma of Cajun cuisine. Lily met me at the airport, practically jumping with excitement. She led me through the bustling streets to the festival venue, where tall banners listed the documentaries selected for screening. Our film, titled Too Basic, The Penelope Winters Story, was displayed right there alongside other compelling titles about social justice, environmental concerns, and personal triumphs. My cheeks flushed with a mix of pride and anxiety. We attended the opening night gala, where filmmakers mingled, exchanging stories of how they'd captured slices of life on camera. Lily introduced me as her amazing subject, and people actually asked for my autograph, praising me for having the courage to speak up in front of the lens. It felt surreal, like stepping into a life I never dreamed was possible. But the sense of community was also heartwarming. I realized these were my people in a sense: storytellers, activists, and everyone who believed that personal narratives can spark real change. The screening itself was both terrifying and exhilarating. Lily and I sat in the front row, my palms sweating as the lights dimmed. The documentary played, and I forced myself not to look away as my family drama unfolded on the screen. I heard gasps during the segment about the hurtful text messages, a few sniffles during the family dinner confrontation, and soft applause when Adeline apologized. By the final scene, the backyard bridal shower, tears glistened in my eyes. As the credits rolled and the audience erupted in applause, Lily nudged me gently. "Stand up," she whispered. I rose to my feet, trembling as the applause grew louder. People whistled, cheered, and some even wiped away tears. "That was incredible," a woman shouted from the back. The festival host invited Lily and me to the stage for a short Q&A. Microphone in hand, I found myself facing a crowd of strangers who suddenly felt like friends. A woman in the audience, perhaps in her 40s, spoke first. She held the mic tight, her voice unsteady. "Miss Winters," she said, "I cried through your entire story. My own mother and I have barely spoken in years, partly because of how I treated her during my wedding. I see now how selfish I was. Thank you for showing me. It's never too late to fix that." Another older gentleman chimed in, saying he admired my courage in standing up for myself, something he'd struggled to do in his own family. Question after question rolled in. How did you find the courage to walk away from the shower? What advice would you give to women feeling disrespected by their children? Did your family fear being judged by the public? I answered as best I could, emphasizing that setting a boundary often feels like an earthquake, scary, but sometimes necessary to rebuild on firmer ground. I also stressed that while I wasn't proud the situation had gotten to that point, I was grateful it led to honest conversations that might never have happened otherwise. When the Q&A wrapped, Lily and I descended the stage, only to be swarmed by people thanking me, asking for photos, and even confiding their own family dilemmas. In that moment, I realized the film had transcended my personal drama. It had become a universal cry for respect and empathy between generations. Caroline texted me right after the screening, brimming with pride. "Mom, they're going wild on social media. Everyone loves you." Adeline chimed in with her own message. Your story is changing hearts. Grandma, I'm so proud. That night, I collapsed into my hotel bed, exhausted but elated. The city lights outside my window glowed like embers in the dark. I thought about how a single text message, "She's too basic," had ignited a journey that led me here to a film festival, a stage, and a moment of validation I never dreamed possible. It was almost too much to take in. But in the best possible way, I returned home, a minor local celebrity. The local news wanted to do a feature, and I even got requests to speak at community centers about my experience. But more important than any media attention was the genuine shift in my daily life. No longer did I feel compelled to always say yes to every favor, nor did I fear that refusing would make me a bad mother or grandmother. I realized that sometimes the best gift you can give your family is an example of self-respect. Caroline, Adeline, and Nicholas organized a small welcome back dinner to celebrate the documentary's success. We gathered in my living room, the same place that had once witnessed our tearful confrontations. This time, it echoed with laughter and clinking glasses. Adeline showed me photos from her honeymoon with Nicholas, pictures of them hiking in the mountains, building a snowman in some winter resort, and sampling exotic foods in little roadside cafes. She seemed genuinely happy, not chasing the validation of online likes. At one point, Adeline handed me a wrapped gift. Inside was a simple, elegant scrapbook titled "Thank You, Grandma." The pages were filled with photos and notes, a snapshot of me teaching her how to bake cookies when she was 10, a photo of us at her high school graduation, a letter she wrote that said, "I used to think you were basic because you were quiet. Now I understand that quiet strength is anything but basic. Thank you for everything you've taught me." Tears blurred my vision as I flipped through the pages, each memory a testament to the love we'd almost lost. Later that evening, after everyone left, I found myself curling up on my armchair with a cup of herbal tea, the documentary, the wedding, the newfound sense of respect. It all felt like a dream, but the most real kind. My phone buzzed with a message from Lily Festival, accolades rolling in. "Let's talk soon." I gazed around my cozy living room decorated in soft lamps, crocheted throws pictures of family, and exhaled a breath of contentment. For the first time in ages, I felt wholly at peace, knowing that I was no longer overshadowed in my own home, my own life. On a crisp autumn morning, I stepped outside to see golden leaves drifting across my porch. I picked one up, marveling at the delicate veins running through it, like the intricate threads of life that connect us all. In that quiet moment, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few months, from the sting of being labeled too basic to reclaiming my narrative, from tears to triumph. I knew there would be more challenges ahead. Life is never a straight line. But I also knew that I no longer walked with the same burden on my shoulders. My family and I had grown closer, forged by honesty and mutual respect. I too had grown, stepping into a fuller version of myself that didn't rely on others to define my worth. My phone chimed with a final message from Adeline, Grandma. "Just wanted to say, I love you. Thanks for always being in my corner." I smiled, typing back, "I love you too, sweetheart. Never forget who you are." Then I placed my phone on the windowsill and looked out at the changing leaves, the sky high and bright. I closed my eyes, feeling the gentle breeze on my face, grateful for every step of this unexpected journey. Because here's the truth. It took being called too basic to remind me I was anything but I was. Penelope Winters, a mother, a grandmother, and most importantly, a woman with her own story to tell. And while the world might celebrate the loud and flashy, I discovered that true power often resides in the quiet resilience of those who refuse to vanish into the background. I allowed myself a private, triumphant grin. My voice was now unshakable, my boundaries firm, and my family, bless their hearts, had finally learned to see me, really see me for who I was. Sometimes it takes a storm to clear the air, so that the sun can shine brighter than ever. And in my life, that storm was a few ugly text messages that led to a glorious, unexpected awakening, proving that it's never too late to stand up, speak out, and reclaim your rightful place in your own family's story. And there you have it, a powerful reminder that standing up for yourself, even against family, can be the bravest decision of all. Penelope's incredible journey from heartbreak to healing wasn't just about canceling a bridal shower, it was about reclaiming her worth, dignity, and voice. We hope her courage inspires you to value yourself and never settle for being treated as less than you deserve. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe and click the notification bell so you'll always be the first to enjoy our latest real life dramas. And don't forget to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Penelope's story. Have you ever faced a similar situation? How did you handle it? Tell us your experience and let us know where you're watching from. Until next time, stay strong and keep sharing your truth with the world. Thank you for listening to Penelope's story. Perhaps, like her, you've quietly given so much only to one day realize you deserve to be respected too. If this story touched your heart, feel free to leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time, where truth and dignity always find their voice.